Hi. So I'm Strings, and this is my wife Beth. And up until last night, I thought that we were going to do this talk. And then she was like, actually, I don't think I've got anything to say. So I'm going to let you do the talk, and I'm just going to be in the audience. And I was like, that's not okay. And then she volunteered to give me a little bit of moral support. At this point, she brought out this, which she'd purchased in a charity shop in Rye yesterday for £1. And apparently she's going to play it at the end of each of the slides that I've got. So, thanks, wife. So, I'm going to start just by telling you a story.
Tim's taking notes.
I'm going to apologise, because this is going to continue throughout, okay? But I'm going to tell you a story. It's about 10 years ago. I'm a mental health professional, and I was standing in a flat of a Somali woman in Islington, up in North London. We've got the police in there, there's a social worker, there's a doctor, and there's this Somali woman looking really defensive. And we're standing in a house. The locksmith has actually cracked the door open. And so it's quite a tense situation. And the social worker is standing next to me and just starts kind of throwing questions at her and saying, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you letting people in? Are you taking your medication? And this woman's kind of, well, yes, I am. And I'm standing there and looking on the floor, because me, the social worker, and all the police are standing opposite this woman, and between us there's a full-size mannequin wearing a builder's hat on the floor, and it's got a little sheet over it, because it would otherwise be completely naked, so somebody's got to look after its dignity. And it's just lying there on the floor, and nobody has mentioned it at all. And so I was having this slightly weird experience where I was thinking, am I actually the only person here that can see that there's a dummy on the floor wearing a builder's hat? And I just kept on looking at it, and I was looking at the social worker who was just carrying on with the questions, and I was looking at the police who were just watching the patient. And eventually the social worker turned to me and said, have you got any questions? I'm like, yeah, who's this guy? And the woman at this point brightened up. She said, oh, the casualty. And I was like, oh, okay, the casualty. Tell me about the casualty. And this is when the story took off, because she said, well, the casualty arrived about 2 weeks ago in a skip down the end of the road, so I rescued him. And basically I realised very quickly that there were small metal boxes in his stomach which needed to be removed. So I started to remove them. It was part of my job. And I'm like, what's your job? And she said, well, I'm not actually a doctor yet, I'm training. I'm a medical student. And I said, oh, right, I used to be a medical student. Which medical school are you at? And she looked at me, which medical school are you at? I'm like, no, I've qualified, I'm not at medical school now. I used to be at King's. She said, oh, right, okay. Well, I'm doing a distance learning course. Okay. And so I said, so, how do you communicate with your university? And she said, they come through the airwaves, and my lecturers tell me exactly what I need to be doing and how to remove these little metal boxes from this casualty's stomach. It's all very, very safe. I thought, oh, okay. And I thought, what tools do you use to remove these little metal boxes? At which point she goes, oh, I use this hammer and this screwdriver, and she's literally standing there like this. And the police at this point got very kind of upset, because they'd obviously missed this big box of tools in their safety check when we come into. And so they quickly, she was very nice. She handed them over. She said, oh, no, please do take them, examine them. They're proper surgical tools. Okay. And we carried on talking, and what was really lovely was that actually, as we discussed the situation, although she was really, really unwell, she was also really lovely. And she told me, she said, well, I've had to be really careful. I said, what's this builder's hat all about? She said, well, you never know, falling masonry could hurt the casualty's head. So I put a builder's hat to protect it. I said, oh, that was very kind. And she said, and also, as you can see, I've inserted a small straw into the casualty's mouth to make sure that they can breathe. I thought, that's really lovely. She'd also blocked up all the air vents in the house in case gas came in. And I guess my big worry at this point was, is there any risk of her trying to remove metal boxes from other people? And so I asked her this, and she just looked at me like I was completely mad and said, I'm a medical student, that would be ridiculous. I'm not qualified to work on actual living people yet. And so I said, how long till you qualified? She was like, at least 2 years. So I thought, well, we're fine. And the really nice thing that came out of that was that we didn't end up bringing her into hospital. She was happy to then work with her care coordinator in the community. She carried on meeting up with them. They were able to talk to her about some medication and some psychotherapy that she needed. And she actually stayed out of hospital. I carried on covering that area for probably 5-6 years, and she never had an admission in that time. And the importance of that was about listening. Because you see people, you look at any of you guys, and you make judgments, and you think, I bet I could make some judgments about you or you. I could get a feel for you, but you don't know people. And what I want to talk about today is about the importance of listening, because I think it changes people's lives. It changes the world around you and how you experience it, and it's really good for not just you, but the people around you. And I'm just wondering whether, if we can start listening, whether we can have a bit of a ripple effect to make the world a slightly better place. So, that's it. Okay. So we're going to just briefly talk about the idea of hark. And hark is the old-fashioned word for listen. And I think we need to use it because I think we're losing that old-fashioned art of listening. And the number of times, and you will have seen it today, the number of times that people are apparently having a conversation and actually all they're doing is looking at their phone, looking at their watch, fiddling around with watching videos on YouTube. We're actually losing that ability to connect. And Beth and I, when we used to actually have conversations and she didn't have a little drum kit from the charity shop, we used to go out to dinner, it was lovely. And we went out to a Pizza Express a little while ago, and there was a woman, I like whoever that is over there, thank you. There was a woman and her daughter having lunch, and they literally did not look at each other for the entire lunch. They were both on their respective phones. At one point, they each took selfies of themselves as their pizzas arrived, and then probably sent them to each other, because there was a moment where they checked their phones over the table. It was the most strange thing, but no conversation, guys. And you think, what have we come to where this is what we're doing? Do we want our lives? Do we want to look back on our lives and actually all we've done is sat on our phones and watched videos and texted each other and taken photos? Or do we want to have real human connection? So it's an old-fashioned idea, listening, but it's so important. And in my job, I'm aware that loneliness and disconnection is a risk factor for every type of mental health problem. So whether you're talking about Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, agoraphobia, substance misuse, ADHD, anything, child, adult, older adult, if you are lonely, you are more likely to get unwell, more severely, more frequently, be harder to treat, and be unwell for longer. Because you're lonely. And why are we lonely? Because we've forgotten how to connect with each other. But the problem is, you can't just stick two lonely people in a room and go, there you go, just talk to each other. Because we've forgotten how to do it. And so we need to start relearning. We need to start putting a bit of time and effort back into listening to each other again. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Whoever that is, I'm buying you a drink at the next break. Thank you. So, I think that's all I want to say about Hark. So we need to learn to listen again. And that leads us to Sonder. It's quite inspired. Thank you, Beth. So Sonder is a neologism, a new word that's been made up in about 2014 for the Book of Obscure Sorrows, which was a book that gave names to emotions that didn't previously exist. And this one means that experience of realising that other people's lives are just as complex as yours, even if you're not aware of it. And so the idea is, all of us, we are the main player in our own play. And everybody else are these kind of extras that pad out the theatre, that pad out the coffee shop, that stand in queues in front of you, that bog up the M25 when you're in a hurry. They're the other guys, and they are just bit parts. But actually, each of them has you as a little bit part actor. You're the one padding out their environment with little consequence, little story. But actually, when you have this moment, it's a bit like when you look up at the stars on a really dark night and you realise how small you are. When you sit back and you go, look at the complexity. All of these people are not just as interesting as me, not just as complex as me, but they all have their story. Suddenly, the world can start getting a little bit more interesting again, and we've got something to get our teeth into. So what I would like, and actually what Beth would like as well, yeah? What we would like is to challenge people to seek the Sonder, to seek that experience of recognising the complexity that's going on around you and to engage with it, okay? So, I didn't think you were going to stop, no. That was really good, actually. Yeah. Wherever our drummer is, you need to really... That was quite good, wasn't it? Yeah. Next month. Yeah, okay. So, little challenge. I think it's really important to listen. I'm a psychiatrist, and I think it's really good for mental health. Beth is actually a special needs teacher, and she's seen the... Sorry?
No shit, obviously.
Beth is obviously a special needs teacher and has seen the difference that listening makes in families and not listening makes in families. All of you have got your stories. You are surrounded by people with stories. And if you would be willing to take a little challenge in the next 24 hours, I think you could make your own lives a little bit more interesting and possibly have a good effect on someone else. So, a fifth of the country is properly lonely. 1 in 5 people properly lonely. And a lot of people go through periods of loneliness in their life. Now, that means that there's quite a lot of lonely people here tonight. Don't try and connect because you are lonely, but because you wish to connect with someone else. Because you wish to relieve someone else's loneliness, because you wish to hear someone else's story. So do it a little bit altruistically, and it will bounce back to you as a real good old slap of goodness, okay? Do a little bit of maverick, guerrilla, ninja listening to somebody who doesn't even realise it in the next 24 hours. And what I mean is shine your spotlight. So if you're having a conversation, if you are looking at your phone, looking at your watch, or whatever you're doing, you're turning your spotlight onto you. Take your spotlight, turn it entirely onto somebody else, and just dive into whatever they're saying. Be compassionate, be empathic, be interested and curious, and listen to someone else's story. And just do it for 3, 4, 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be the person that serves you in Morrison's, it could be your mum, it could be your partner, it could be your daughter or your son, it could be somebody standing at the bus stop. It doesn't really matter. Just listen and give them your full attention. Don't judge them, don't come back with ideas, and really don't do the, oh my God, yeah, when that happened to me, that was just like, and you know what I did? It was really, really helpful, so you might like to learn from it. Don't do that, because it's really annoying, you might get slapped. But if you can, give that little bit of altruistic listening and see what happens. And it's really worrying if somebody turns around to you and says, you've never listened to me like that before. That's really good feedback for you to realise that maybe you could up your game more generally. But please, give it a go. Just for a few minutes tomorrow. If you do, that will ripple out, and I think it will have a fantastic effect on the world around you. Thanks.